Polipede works here. So in chapter 1065, it is made mention that a lineage factor is baked into each and every Seraphim, containing the potential that the warlords that they are based off of already have. So the Seraphim, in short, are only held back by their current ages at this moment in time. Maybe because of the quickness in which the SSG project needed to be handled or wrapped up, or perhaps Vegapunk didn't have the means to actually age up the Seraphim any more than he already could. So the reason why Bonney is now an interesting factor in this arc is because she has the potential to age all of them up to be in their prime, which gives a question: would they actually be bigger than their warlord counterparts if they were all aged up? But if they were all aged up, they would seemingly be better than their warlord counterparts because they're already predisposed to be them at the level they are at now. So all they would need to do is actually grow and grow into what they have already been sort of destined to become. This is very similar to basically what we just experienced in the previous arc in Wano with Momo. Momo is the son of Odin. Odin was known for being very durable just from being him and being out in the world. Momonosuke inherited that durable body. Luffy and Zoro make mention of this on occasion when they make jokes about wanting to challenge him. So same could be said for the Seraphim. They're already predisposed to be great based on whom they were cloned off of. Combine that with Lunarian DNA and anything else their respective warlord already is able to do. So that makes me think it could be quite possible that some point in the future, Bonney actually will be threatened with aging all these Seraphim kids up, and then they become actual real threats. So now here's my question for like the future. Do you actually think Zoro, for example, will fight Mihawk, or will he actually fight the Mihawk Seraphim? Because if this line of thinking adds up to actually be anything, the Seraphim Mihawk would most likely be stronger than Mihawk is now, because he has the potential of what Mihawk is now plus more, if I'm understanding lineage factor and latent capabilities correctly. This means that even Jinbei and his Seraphim are kind of at odds, because now the scary thing about Jinbei's Seraphim is that based on how Fishman Karate works, it sends shockwaves or ripples through the water in the air, which then sends ripples through the body of a person. Now imagine if the water limitation kind of just went away. And if what we saw is actually accurate, which it seems like it is, and somehow Vegapunk was able to extract the lineage factor from Senor Pink and put that in sort of like a form of a devil fruit and then give that to the Jinbei Seraphim, or simply extract the essence from Senor Pink and put that into the Jinbei Seraphim in some other way, which is not unlikely because we have seen Vegapunk copy Devil Fruits somewhat semi-successfully beforehand with Momo's Devil Fruit, which is basically the same as Kaido's. I'm not actually sure what the difference is. It may just be the color, because technically Momo's dragon is pink and the name of the fruit lies with the name of the actual dragon that it turns the user into. So it's not the fish fruit model peach colored dragon. It's the fish fruit model Azure dragon. So the point of the fruit is to turn you into a blue dragon. Momo's not a blue dragon. So that could just be the failure, which is a very, very small window of error, because so far Momo has all the capabilities of Kaido, along with a very durable body that he inherited from his father. So Vegapunk might have found a shortcut in order to make a perfect replica of a Devil Fruit, because what we see from Seraphim Jinbei in 1065, he can treat the ground, or I guess any sort of non-inorganic matter, as if it were water, much like how Senor Pink did back in the day. So If this is the case, he can send a shockwave through any matter containing liquid or not. And then that shockwave could then go through a person. So it's like if Jinbei had 10 times more range and capabilities than he already has. Because if you don't know, Fishman Karate, as it's been explained, kind of sort of is the most devastating martial art in the series. Because it ignores durability, because it hits you internally. This was done on Luffy back in Fishman Island, whom is normally immune or has a very high resistance to shockwaves and blunt damage. Shockwaves a little less so because Ragogun went through him pretty effectively, but blood damage, pretty much, yeah. And it's just highlighting that, yes, Fishman Karate goes through just about anything. So imagine this already kind of killer martial art being done by someone who is basically the master of the fighting style as far as we know, because there's no one actually better than Jinbei at using Fishman Karate or Fishman Jiu-Jitsu as far as we've seen. Speaking of Fishman Jiu-Jitsu, this is also terrifying because if Seraphim Jinbei can just turn the ground or any matter into water, how far does that extend? Because if he's picking up bits of the ground as if it were water and he's holding it in his hand, he can probably do that with Fishman Jiu-Jitsu as well and just take a big chunk of floor and throw it at somebody. Think about that. He could just take the ground and chuck it and it would just flow like water. And we don't know what happens when someone is actually hit with something like that. There's no real hard rules for the swim fruit. We basically know what we've seen. So there's a ton of room for interpretation. That's a very interesting thought because if he can do that, that means nothing is really off limits. Also, another smaller point, but still an interesting point. Can Seraphim Jinbei talk to fish? Now, this doesn't really come in handy in terms of like battle prowess most of the time because of course we're assuming that the Seraphim Jinbei is a Delver user and therefore can't swim. So I don't think that would be an issue, but it could be something useful if Seraphim Jinbei is on a vessel going to a destination and they encounter some nautical problems from some sort of assailant on an enemy vessel. Then he could summon whale sharks or any other form of sea life that isn't a sea king and then possibly capsize the enemy vessel. Something to think about because that is a skill that Jinbei does have. Not useful most of the time unless, you know, it's a nautical environment, but it is a skill that he does have. And that brings me to another interesting point. If Bonney ages up the Seraphim, what becomes of characters like Moria? Because Moria in his prime could clash with a young Kaido. That's kind of ridiculous. So what is Moria without the trauma? I think he's a big monster is what he is. So that's just something to really mull over. I don't know if we're going to see any more of these Devil Fruit copies because the opening to this sort of concept was Mihawk and Hancock, obviously. And Hancock, the Seraphim version of Hancock, didn't have the Love Fruit. So based on how weirdly esoteric the Love Fruit is, like it's actually based on the feelings of another individual, it's not really the beam itself that has the ability, which is a kind of a weird thought. It's the feelings of the person who is viewing Hancock at the time, which determines whether they are fully affected by the beam or not. That's a really roundabout way of explaining it, but that's how it is for the most part. Now, it is shown that she can petrify inanimate objects by kicking them, so she does have some sort of local petrification. She does do this too to Smoker's Jutty. So it's very interesting as to what that means for her abilities and if that could be replicated into a Seraphim. Because what's also stated during the Straw Hat's little scrap with Seraphim Jinbei is that, like I want to say I mentioned beforehand, Vegapunk has collected battle data. So I don't know what that means for the future of these Seraphim, because or even if he makes copies of the Straw Hats at some point, because having that data has to translate into something in the future. But we shall see. With that, that's all I have for you today. Thank you for watching. If you like stuff like this, please feel free to check out my YouTube channel, Polipede Works. And if you like what you see, I would appreciate your subscription. Thank you so much. See you next time.